All right.
Okay, so we'll start today. Welcome back. All right, so we have a couple of things for you. So we'll go over what we have and then we'll hand the floor over to you if that's okay. So at the last session we talked about wages. You had some feedback on some of the corporal and sergeant formulas. So we listened to that, we went back and looked at it, we made some changes that we want to go over and review those with you today. But before we get started, I do want to back up. We've gone through quite a few sessions now. We've covered a lot of articles, covered a lot of territory. And you all this is the first time we're bargaining with you. A lot of your members, this might be the first contract that they're going through with you. So I just wanted to share some things with you before we get started, so especially since I feel like we're at the end, we're on the critical pieces now. So I want to talk a little bit about our bargaining relationship with the police union and just the history and what we've been able to accomplish so far. And I'm very hopeful and optimistic that we'll be able to continue that today and throughout the whole time IUPA represents you all. We've been able to do a lot with the union, with the chief, with human resources, with city management. And I just want to highlight some of those for you today. Partly to set a positive tone and just remind everybody that when we do work together, some good things can happen. So a couple of years ago, we had some conversations with the chief about what do we do to recruit and retain officers, right? And there was three things the chief identified, three very distinct items. One was take-home vehicles, one was the tattoo policy, and one was the SRT team. So the SRT, I think DW ran with that. I don't know anything about that. That was his specialty area. The take-home policy, I don't know if you all remember, I know some people in this room were on the bargaining team. I think it was 2016. We spent a lot of time with the union on that policy. The union felt, and the members all felt very strongly about that take-home policy, that we needed to have vehicles for the officers outside the city limits. And the city said no in bargaining. Like it was a no. We didn't want to put it back in the contract. That policy was a result of the recession. Economically, it was really important for our budget that we did not have that policy in place. So we said no at the bargaining table, and then a couple of years later, the chief and human resources sat down and wrote the new policy that you all have today. That was in 2020. Also in 2020, the chief and HR wrote the revised tattoo policy. So I share that with you just because a lot happens away from the bargaining table, and I think we've worked through a lot of these things that are important to you and important to us. Another thing we've done, many of the union representatives over the last few years have come forward to HR, and I'm sure to the chief as well, and talked about the importance of your equipment and your vehicles and really wanting up-to-date tools. So as I'm sure you all know, in 2020, the City Commission set aside a millage rate just for public safety vehicles and equipment. So this was a brand new policy. This year it's $800,000 right off the top of the tax rate that goes to your policy, vehicle replacement policy, your equipment, your guns, your vests, your body cameras, your tasers, all of those things. Also in 2021, around the same time, the radios were upgraded to P25. I don't know if you all know this, but Kelly worked with both chiefs so that we were the first in line to get those radios when they came out. We were waiting for the county to convert to those radios. And Kelly had the great idea to use the CARES Act funds to purchase those radios so that we weren't waiting, and we got those right out of the gate. I know Kelly worked with the chief, she worked with the union reps at the time on both fire and police to make that happen. It was a priority. And then just the last example I want to talk about is this pay study that we're talking about today. So that pay study was in 2021. Leading up to that pay study, we do meet with all of the unions. We talk to all the directors, we talk to the unions, and we try and get as much feedback as possible. And what we heard, not only from the chief, but from the union and the members of the police department, and really this was across the board, was that we needed to compete with other cities in terms of wages. The wages were low, and the pool of police officers, of good officers, was shrinking, right? And so that was the priority of this pay plan. So I mention these because I want to talk, I just want to bring some awareness that we're all trying to work together to use all the resources we can as efficiently as we can. We want to serve the residents. We want the employees to have a good place to work, a positive place to work. We want to be fair, we want to be competitive, and we want everyone to want to come to work, right? That's the best that's the best I can hope for is, I work Monday through Friday, so on Sunday night, if I'm looking forward to work, that's all I can ask for. So I hope that our police officers have that same feeling when they're coming into work. We can't give you everything at the table. As I've talked about, some things happen away from the table, and that's okay because not everything belongs in the contract. Sometimes we might not want something in the contract for a particular reason. Maybe it's the timing, maybe it's we need more flexibility in changing a policy, and having something in the contract is just, it adds a rigid and sometimes restrictions to being able to modify and change things as we move forward. But it doesn't mean that we can't still work together on items and get them done. So again, we can't give you everything. Usually, we can't give the unions everything they ask for at the table, right? That's normal. We all start, in one place and we bargain towards something we can all agree on. And we don't expect you to concede on everything either. We're working towards a middle. We're working to try and find an agreement here. So with that said, I do want to look at the summary of where we're at on all of our economic items, specifically wages. We'll go over that in detail, the changes that we made in response to your concerns. I do want to say, although those are the things we want to talk about today, there are some things we do not want to talk about today, and and that is just the revisiting of the pension allegations in terms of Florida statute compliance. We are confident in the analysis we've provided you. We've conferred with pension experts. We've provided case law. We've provided numerous written letters responding to your concerns, and we think we've covered all of those. If you still have concerns, please do reach out to a pension attorney or expert and address those. And I think we have covered that, and I would like to focus on the articles at hand today. So let's start with just the summary. So let's go over the summary and then we'll pull up the detail. So when we started in May of 23, we started looking at wages, and this first chart is what the city initially offered. We had the $1.53. This was based on the pay study that was conducted that we just talked about. $1.53 year one. We had the time and grade for year two with a minimum of 3% increase and a 2.5% increase for year three. So over 3 years, this was a total, and these are just average increases based on the calculations of the employees at that time, was 13.88%. Okay, so through negotiation, through discussions, through identifying your concerns, we've had several variations of that proposal. What we're going to show you today has the $1.73 in year one, the dollar, an extra flat dollar upon ratification, which we've already talked about. Year two, time and grade, we added a years of service component in there, but we modified it a little bit from what you were discussing the other day. We actually increased it slightly. And then we have 2.5% in year three. And so the total average increase over the course of the contract over 3 years is 21.2% increase for your members. We've, other economic items, just to highlight, this isn't everything, but just some of the things we've already agreed to. These are actually the two items the city brought to the table, was increasing the promotional amount from 7.5% to 10%. This is just, this is in an effort to avoid some compression with promotional increases. And then we added Veterans Day as a holiday. Items that we're considering that you all have asked for is overtime after 80 hours in that 2-week period, and then retroactive pay, and we're willing to consider both of those items. So let's look at the wages. What we did, so yeah, we can just focus on this if you want to zoom a little bit. So these are just the corporals and sergeants. What we tried to do here is we took all the corporals and sergeants, we took all those employees back to the police officer pay range. So for example, if you had six years as a police officer before you promoted, we did your calculation in the police officer range. And the reason we did this is because there's there's just significant increases to the ranges in this pay study, right? You've got the $1.73 and then the dollar. So that's just a larger than typical increase to the pay range. So we took everybody back to the police officer pay range, did your years of service, all of your years of service, whether it was as officer, corporal, sergeant, whatever those years were, put them in the officer pay range, came up with a number, and then put a 10% promotional calculation on top of that, or 20%, right, depending on corporal or sergeant. Right. So it's a little higher than what you all proposed. Again, the reason we did it, I just think the increases to the range were unusually high this year, and it really addresses the compression formula, the compression issues that might arise. Specifically. Right. So that's what the kind of reddish color is your corporals, the green, which doesn't really show up, is your sergeants. The years of the time and grade there is still time and grade, it's not the years of service. And you can actually have printed copies of this. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's the printed copies of the updated one.
We'll give you.
Well, you have one of them missing the back page.
This is 3 copies. And these are, again, just sample drafts, so if you notice errors, let us know. Greg, you want one more?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
This is $1.70. That's just the total for those 2 columns. And then this is the time and grade % increase. And then this one is just 2.5%. So it's that plus 2.5.
questions on this. Obviously, it's a little updated. You saw parts of this in the past. But we did want to clarify the offer, and as Claire said, some of it, in some aspects, even a little higher than we've been talking about, or even than you've been talking about. I know you need time to look at this, so. As Claire said, if there's errors or mistakes, calculations, et cetera, certainly they'll look at that. But just to quickly follow up, and then we'll see what you've got to say, but you know, our goal is to try to get this done. We've been talking about all the issues now for a while. We think this is a very attractive wage offer. Obviously, everything that's left sort of part of a package. The one thing is, she pointed out on the slide, the 80-84, you know, I'll just put it right out there. To get this done today, we would, as part of the package, you know, agree to go to the 80 hours from the 84 as part of this package.
Say that one more time, Mark, I apologize.
That's right. I was saying, as the slide pointed out, we were considering 80 versus 84 for the overtime. And to try to get this done today, part of the package, in addition to these, you know, the significant increases, to get this done, we will put on the table that we would go to 80 instead of 84. So, you know, we want to put everything on the table for you. You know, we know pension reform is a big issue. The only thing I could really say at this point, we do not have authority from our commission. We do meet with them. As we've always told you, very transparent with them, what your position is, why you want it, why you deserve it, what your arguments are. And they just don't feel like this is the year and a reopener to do that. Also, you know, we know your interest is the bargaining unit and the officers. That's why you're here. You're not here for anybody else. But from the city's perspective, we need to look at a bigger picture. We have other unions, fire, general employees, non-represented. And we just feel like we have to have a more global look at the whole pension issue, because there was pension reform for them too in the past. So the commission just doesn't think this is the year for that. We are willing to commit to continue the discussion, you know, continue to look at it for the future. As Claire said, you know, at this point, you know, IUPA's, this is the first contract, the first year. We want to get a contract, we want to get things in place, get the relationship moving in a positive fashion, and then work together for future improvements. So we understand the importance, and we are willing to look at that on a more global basis. And, you know, perhaps maybe the way to deal with that is have a reopener on pension in a year for next year. And that gives us time to do whatever studies we feel need to be done. Again, not just for this, but we need to look at the whole picture for the city and the cost of the city. But, you know, there's a lot of, you know, desire to get things moving in that direction. But we want to get this first contract. Let's get it done in time, so there's no other retroactive issues. You know, we hope, you see, we've got to put a really good package on the table. So.
Last time, I think it was the last time we met, we did talk about other aspects of the pension to try and gauge your interest on if you wanted to negotiate about some of the other issues, for example, the excess money or setting up a share plan or doing things like that. I didn't get the sense that's where your interest is. I think your interest really is in changing the pension plan and bringing some of those benefits back. So we're not going to pursue those other options if you're not interested, but you know, I think the reopener is something we can talk to the commission about. Again, it gives us time, it gives the commission time. They are also a new commission. They are getting up to speed on what happened historically in this pension reform. It was a long process. When they did the pension reform, it was a long process with the commission at that time. It was a long process with the bargaining units. All those reforms were negotiated in exchange for other things. And so, you know, I think at this point, we're all willing to look at it and do a hard study and see and see what a fair plan is and with the current market. But to try and get that done, we're a year into the contract. I think your members want the wages. I don't know. I mean, you're definitely their representatives and can speak to that. But if we can get the wages done, it gives you an opportunity, again, through the bargaining process. You know, there's something about getting a contract closed when both parties are trying to close a contract, and I know for those of you that have sat through negotiations, when you're trying to get an agreement, that is the time you can, as representatives for your members, you can get a lot of these things that are very important to your members just in the process of closing a contract. Those things like the retro pay, the things like the ADIs. It's not, you know, it's just, there are things that we can achieve through this good faith process. And that's the advantage of the bargaining process, that you, to be honest, you don't always have that advantage through other avenues. And it's a way, you know, it's a way to really talk about this and get your members some of those benefits. And it gives, because in exchange what you're doing is you're allowing the city and the commission the time to really make the best decisions financially for the community, for your members, for all of the employees. So our scope is much bigger than yours, and we realize that, and that's not your scope, but it is our scope, and it's a very serious issue that all of us, you know, don't take lightly, but that everyone hears you and everyone knows this is important to you. So we also don't want to be dismissive of that. And it's been a long, you know, the pension reform was 10 years ago. So if the market and the industry and things have changed, then we need to change with it, then we want to look at that. But we need to really look at it. You know, we need to make good decisions, because it's not something that we can change and then in 5 years change again. And then you know, clearly going through this process makes it apparent that these decisions are serious and should be taken with great consideration, great study. You know, I mean, just the amount of effort that needs to go into this is serious. It's not to be taken lightly. So that's our 2 cents on that. So, Kelly, do you have any?
No. I think I have it, yeah.
So forgive me, I'm still in Columbia time. So no pension as of right now, we're still no pension reform, correct?
Right, like I said, we have those, you know, we have some of those aspects of pension we can discuss, you know, today and agree to, but I don't think that's where you all are at, and so I don't want to, you know, we're happy to go down and discuss, you know, down that road and discuss those with you, but again, just trying to gauge your interest. I don't think you want to talk about, when we brought that up previously.
Well, the share plan thing, that's already in the contract. If there's an overage of 185, the share plan gets set up. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, well, we were talking about putting more funds in there, doing something to increase funding.
In addition to, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
That was an addition, that was
Right.
the city putting funds in,
Right.
not from the
Right.
share fund.
Yeah. And then.
And then negotiating the frozen amount.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, what aspects are you referring to?
Those are the 2 items that we
Okay.
have
Okay.
authority.
Now, so again, so you're saying today, if we caucus and we look at this, our members agree to it, you're willing to throw in the anything over 80 hours is considered overtime, correct?
Right.
Okay. And then, as far as the retro goes, everything on the board is retro to October 1, correct?
The $1.73 is retro to 10/1/22.
Right.
The dollar is upon ratification.
Okay, so that's
We
not
could make
retro.
that, I mean, we'd be fine saying we could make that today. You know, if we agreed today, we would make it effective today.
Okay.
We just need a date, you know, a date certain
Yeah,
to do
understand.
that. And then the time and grade and/or years of service, that revised calculation would be as of 10/1/23, even if it took us, you know, a month to ratify,
Yeah.
to go through the process, because it does take time for you all to do your vote, for us to go to the commission, so we would
Okay,
just.
so the
make
retro
it-
aspect is just the $1.73?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and if there's something here that you see that you know is important to your members or would make it appealing to your members, you know, please let us know.
copies? Online.